All right, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. Welcome to the show. We got Enoch Graham, the urban gardener. We had him on earlier in the summertime, and I talked him into coming back on today. So we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, thank you so much for doing this with us again, and welcome to the show.
Awesome, Ryan, man, great. We had such a great conversation last time, and I think another thing a lot of everybody don't understand is we had such a great long conversation on your live stream that I think we did like a whole nother live stream full conversation afterwards too.
Yes, we did, and it was
It
great.
was a
It
great
was great.
conversation.
I love
Yeah.
I love having conversations like that with people like you who love growing, enjoy. We have that common ground,
Hmm.
and we can talk about things, and it just having that common ground really helps build a foundation where you have great conversation and great friendship.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for coming on here this evening, and thanks everybody that's in our chat, and Janet for being the moderator of this. Thank you so much for taking your time this evening. But kind of want to jump right into it. So before everybody got on just now, we were talking about the plants behind you,
Right.
and one of them piqued my interest really, really well. And you called it the devil's ivy, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually called a pothos, and I'm not sure what the like technical plant term is, but most people know it as a pothos. Devil's ivy is one other one. There's several other names that they have for it as well too. But yeah, that's literally one of my favorite plant. And I was just mentioning and talked to you before we started. Is a plant that has been basically following me and been with me now for I think well over 25 years that I've had this plant.
That is insane to me to have a plant 25 years. And I was just asking before I realized we needed to go live, how do you care for something for 25 years? A lot of us would struggle to grow something the entire summer, and you've got a plant that's almost as old as I am.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and and that's the thing. The really the story of this plant's existence is really in its own resilience. You know what I mean? I've kept it. It's been one of my favorite plants. In fact, really the reason why I think I've held on to it more so than I've held on to other plants. I've moved into different apartments, different homes, different places over this 25 plus years that I've had this plant,
Right.
and and so in each time, and one of the main reasons why I make sure I'm continuing to keep it along with me is kind of how I got it. I started work in my early 20s for this little restaurant in Spokane, Washington, and they were cleaning out and remodeling their dining room, and they were throwing out a bunch of plants, and there was this, and they were all just dead, most of them, because they by the time I started, they'd been out in this back area long enough to die off mostly. But there was this one, and just this little tiny, tiny bit of green popping out of it. It was just that little bit of life. I was like, you know what? I'd had enough experience with plants already throughout my life up to that point where I was like, you know what? I got a new place. I need a plant. Let's see if we can bring this back to life. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I'm telling you, if you'd saw it or most people would saw it, they'd have given up on it and they just let it go into the trash. But man, I let that little tiny little green thing grow, and it did. It kept growing. I just nursed it along until it really started growing into a really nice plant. It took about a year for it to really start establishing itself as a nice plant. And at that point in time, I built this real relationship with a plant. You know what I mean? I nursed this thing back to life. It was nearly dead. Me and this plant have a massive connection now. You know what I mean?
Right.
So again, I've gained all these other plants. I've had a living room that's looked like this for most of my adult life, you know, um, and I've had many different plants, and I've had to get rid of most of those plants throughout different moves. But this one's always stuck with me because of that relationship, you know.
That's
And
awesome.
what a lot of people, if you're looking at the screen right now too, you see it. It starts right here in this gray pot right behind me, behind this picture here, and it goes up and it trails this way. When it gets up to the top of this, it's a lamp right there next to the YouTube sign there, right? So it's this
Right.
lamp. So it goes up to there, and that's where it splits off and goes in two different directions. So the other direction it's going this way, you'll see it going over the screen. and then it continues to go on. It droops down below the level of the window here, and then comes back up again, up over a bookshelf. It droops back down the other side of the bookshelf. It comes back up over the wall and over a clock and a big poster picture I have, and it's twisted around the poster twice. So on this side of that plant, it's got about a 40-foot length to it.
That's incredible.
And then it splits off and goes the other direction. And you can see it coming across here, across the guitars, and goes this way across the other room. And I imagine that it goes about 25 feet the other direction.
That is absolutely incredible that plant does that. I mean, so what do you do? What do you like? How do you care for it? Like, is it just a little bit of water? Does it need a lot of sunlight? Like, is it
really the big
plant?
thing about these are they really they're a low light plant, but don't be fooled by anything that says low light. That just means they can tolerate a low light. Any plant that says low light can also tolerate a good amount of light too. And when you get a good amount of light and you get some good health in it, that's when you really start to see the variegation form into the leaves, and the leaves get really big and pronounced and all of that. But again, this plant really the story of it is its resiliency. It'll put up with so much, and it really actually enjoys a bit of drought. It likes you to let it likes to let you to let it dry out, and especially during the winter time. And then when the temperatures change, you get some leaf die off. It just happens naturally.
Right.
But it continues to grow more vines to cover that up and all of that. But really, I mean, that's the thing about it. It just doesn't take much care.
Have you ever had to prune it back?
Let it do it. And that's really every time I've had it. I've probably had it in a dozen different places over the years, and each time I've moved, I've had to cut it back.
Okay.
So there were several years it only grew so big, and it only was so big. There were a few places I lived in for a couple of years at a time, and each of those times it did wrap itself around the living room and do that again. But each time, I mean, I can't take that like right now. I mean, 40 feet one direction, 25 the other. I mean, I probably could, and it would take some work and get some help with some friends to make sure I'm not giving any damage to it or anything. But if I did move or something like that, yeah, we would chop it back. I'd cut it into 1 million cuttings and hand them out to friends.
That's cool.
That's another cool thing about it is that this is probably in dozens of people's homes.
Really?
Because I've given cuttings off of this over the years to so many people.
That's awesome. So it propagates easy then.
Yeah. You just take off one of the growing. Well, actually, you can take off one of the vines and you just cut it by the little nodes that it has, and you can use some like maybe cocoa coir or some other sort of like I think some people use like some peat moss, like the really thick stuff or whatever, in that container, and you just keep it moist and you lay it on there, and it'll start forming roots and start sprouting its own new sprouts and start growing again. It's That's so cool. Easy to propagate. So yeah, and interesting about that, it all started from this little tiny green thing that was off on its way to the dump.
That's awesome. You know, now I want to find a plant like that.
It's gonna be dead and it's gonna be gone. Yeah. And actually I was talking with someone on my last week's show too about the pothos and this plant. They brought it up themselves and were telling me about how it has like it can be traced back to like one common ancestor.
Oh, that's cool.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
all of the pothos plants of this variety that are out there are all probably related.
That's wild.
Probably came from one plant at one point in time, maybe a couple hundred years ago, or however long ago, and has been propagated and separated, and
that is incredible.
I'm sure that's probably for a lot of plants and a lot of different things and stuff too. But I just think it's really interesting about the pothos, that it's that way.
Right. I mean, that is very cool. I want a plant like that now. You know what I mean? I just that I can have for 25 years. That just sounds so cool.
We'll have to get you a piece, and I'll have to send you one.
Absolutely, man. I would love that.
A piece of this actual plant. How about that?
That would be very cool. I would love that, man. I would decorate behind me with it.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, man. I got a big crock pot right here. I just make that the pot that I planted in and let it grow out of there and just have a jungle going, man. But one last question I got about it. Do you ever have to pull it out of the pot and trim back any of the roots to, do anything with those or what?
I have done that. It's kind of in an idea like you're cutting back so much of the plant when I make those moves or something like that. I will, in a sense, kind of go and pull the plant out, cut it back, and cut some of the root back as well too, and then put it in a smaller pot again, and then start repotting it back up
Okay,
as it
cool.
grows again. So yeah, that's something I would do definitely. You don't necessarily have to. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's just something I've done because what it does, in like most things, you start cutting some things off, or you start cutting some stems and leaves off of plants and stuff like that. It starts invigorating growth. You know what I
right.
mean? It's
Yep.
losing something, so it wants to regrow that. So I do that because it then becomes a good idea to, you know what I mean, to just push it to start growing again.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
So so let's run over real quick how the rest of your summer went and
yeah,
what all you produced out there on that. For those who don't know, you know, given the title, you know, he is an urban gardener. Can you kind of
right.
just give them a quick rundown if they haven't been here before, you know, like how big your space is?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I have basically two and sometimes three spaces depending on the year and whether or not I'm growing in the community garden or not. But then I have my home space, which consists of basically just a like a 10-foot by 10-foot back patios, cemented back patio space. And then all of my in-ground space are ran along these alleyways that I have. So back behind me, behind this wall, is an alleyway that runs this way, and then there's another alleyway that runs up as on a T in the
Right.
middle of my block. So I grow on each of these different lengths of alleyway, and so that's where we get a lot of our extra in-ground space along the back fence and alleyway and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what we got here at home. I do have some news about what I'm going to be doing in the future, but the other space, I have a friend who has this really cool corner lot house and a big front yard that runs across the each angle of the corner, and we put in 20-foot by 40-foot plots running on each side of that. So we got two big, huge plots of garden and growing space that we grow over there as well too.
Right. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
what did you accomplish this year as far as your growing? You know, did you have a good year out there?
Yeah, yeah, and and unfortunately for a lot of people who follow my channel and all of that, we were really kind of focused this year on what you see our set and this sort of thing. Here is our show, the Let's Get Growing show. So we really focused on that. So I didn't really get to make too much content
Right,
for making videos, and what I usually try to do regularly throughout the growing season is what I call garden journal videos. Just kind
right,
of follow along with what I'm doing and what I'm growing. But we were really focused on this more so than doing that. So I didn't get a chance to make the video content I wanted to show people. And that's so unfortunate, Ryan. I'm telling you, I'm bummed about the fact that I mean, I love the show and I think the show's going great and that we focused and put our attention into that. But we had one of the great growing years this year. I threw it off as a year that I didn't think was going to be much because I had a guy, a new owner who bought the property. So as the property was being sold, I didn't know whether or not I was going to get to stay here and keep my space and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't put any of that energy like I'm putting in now before the season starts. So I had
right,
I had to I had to really work hard at the beginning of the season to catch up with a lot of stuff, and really I just didn't feel like my attention was really on it that much. And maybe that was the key too. I don't even know.
might be. Right,
But
right,
I had so much success with so many things and things that I haven't normally had success with in previous years, especially for people who follow my channel, and have seen those previous years, like onions. I mean, I've grown some onions. I've gotten some little decent sized onions, but
right.
this year I grew monsters, dude. I grew
Really?
monster onions this year. Not
That's
just and each variety I grew were great. It wasn't just like one particular variety over another. Each one of them, I drew three different kinds: a red variety and two, like a white and a yellow. And each of them big bombing bulbs that we got off of those things. Broccoli. I had terrible brassicas, and I really
right.
only put my attention on broccoli this year. We didn't do cabbage or some of the other things. Kale I've always done pretty good with, but um, broccoli. I mean, you used to always get like little florets that were just
Right.
little, this and that. This year I got these big old monster ones, and I
What?
was just like, what? Each time
That's
I was like,
crazy.
yeah,
So
yeah,
was these varieties that you've grown in the past?
yeah, yeah. Pretty
So,
basic varieties too, like a Walla Walla onion's pretty common. I think we had the other onions. I'm trying to think of the other varieties that there were, but no, they were common varieties. And the
right.
broccoli was oh gosh, what was it? Is it Calabrese?
Yeah. I know. Yep. Yep.
I think that might be the one. But yeah, another common variety just that
Right.
you can get out there. Yeah, most people get anywhere. And yeah, and each from seed too, which was the thing. I've actually grown decent broccoli before from starts. I've grown some decent onions in the past from
Bulbs.
starts.
Right.
Not the little the little dry bulbs that you would get, but the ones that have green. I got
Okay.
one year I got like a bunch of them from the Grange here, and put those out, and they did pretty good too. But the big thing was that I did it from seed this year, and it was just
Right.
wow, I can't believe it.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Yeah, so for a year I wasn't expecting much. I had all this great success. So
well, what do you contribute to it? I mean, do you think it was maybe you were loving them too much?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it just certain conditions were just right this year. I think one of the things, especially with the onions, I was really trying to pay attention to time of year that I was planting them and getting them started, especially from seeds,
Right.
like onion seeds. I'm going to get those started here in just a couple weeks. You know what I mean? And
You
those are
grow what you would grow long day, right? Long day onions or
yeah.
intermediate onion.
I think we can do both of those.
Okay.
I don't think we can do well with short day.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but definitely, I think mainly a long day is like, yeah, because I'm just kind of right on
The
that
border.
cusp of
Ro-
long day intermediate, but definitely above the border for short day onions.
Okay.
But yeah, and again, timing. Like I said, it'll be just after the beginning of the year that I'll start new seeds, and we'll grow those seeds. I'll start them indoors, and then we'll grow them, and then we'll get them so high, and then we'll cut them back, let them
Right.
regrow again, and by about that time, should be probably late February for us, maybe early March. They'll get out in the ground, and I think that's been the key. Is I've probably gotten them in a bit too late and hadn't had my timing right, but I was really
Are you
trying to
putting them
pay
in?
attention to that this year.
You putting them in raised beds or in the ground?
Yeah, these are in ground. I did do a few in some raised beds and a bucket that I have. We have some buckets, so I put like 3 of them in a bucket as well, and those did all right. But again, with containers and those sort of things, they're not going to get that full
Right.
good size that you're going to get from growing in ground. So we grew some right along the alleyway here, did really well, and that was the key, like how well. And then we grew some over at my friend's place in that space as well too, and we got similar results. So
What was your average
how awesome.
size onions?
Um, gosh, it's bigger than a softball. You know what I mean?
What?
Just bigger than a softball. They're
Holy
probably each
cow.
one of them, and we had them pretty close together too. I was worried whether or not I was putting them in too close. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
this is gonna be what's gonna get me this year." But I put them in, and I didn't really think about it till after they were all in, and then I had to debate: should I go through and just redo that spot, And I just left it, and no, they grew and they got big, and they were almost like right up next to each other. I was really so
That's
surprised by how
crazy.
close that they can grow
Now,
together.
now tell me something because I've grown onions, but I don't grow big ones because every time I've tried, I've always failed. So I grow like bunching onions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Walking onions, whatever you want to call them.
yeah.
But I always hear people talk about, well, you got to ring your onion, you
You got to
know,
ring it.
ring it. And
Hmm.
obviously you didn't do it because you're kind of
Yeah.
stumped, right? So they always say, once your onion starts getting up, pushing up out of the ground, that you
Right.
ring it. You wring the dirt away from it.
Oh,
All
right,
right.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Open it
And
up.
so supposedly, that helps them out. But
Yeah.
I've watched other people who said, yeah, that's kind of baloney or whatever, right? Like they've
Right.
grown them, never touched them, and get big ones like you. In fact,
Yeah.
the ones that I've seen haven't touched, the ones that don't touch them end up being bigger than the ones that ring them.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah.
I
Because I think,
always
in the long run, and here's the thing too, and I always worry about this when I'm planting them. Is like, am I putting, because we're taking a start that's got roots already. It's got that little white, white at the bottom, right where the roots are. And then I worry because I put that down in the dirt about an inch or so, and I'm
right,
like, oh, am I burying it too much? Should I leave that white closer to the surface and that sort of stuff? But no, man, we buried those about inch, even an inch and a half down, and they seem to push and form that bulb and push themselves up, you know.
right,
So in a way, they kind of naturally ring themselves, they're
right.
getting up there and exposing that top, you know. But yeah,
Now,
you definitely.
did you push them with a lot of nitrogen at first, or did you kind of, how was it? What was the feeding on those?
Yeah, that's the thing that surprised me the most. Again, we went with like a real kind of let things go kind of attitude this year. And I didn't really feed anything. I mean, I usually make some compost teas, some worm teas type of stuff that I didn't even, I just didn't spend the time doing it. I was just like, I'm going to plant some things that I normally plant. And, again, timing, I did work on making sure I was trying to get the timing as best as I could. And and other than that, I just let things really grow this year and on their own,
Right,
and really kind of surprised with the results. But again, it's not that I don't recommend, feeding and doing that sort of stuff. I mean, I have incredible results year after year with all sorts of other things that I spend and take the time to, you know,
right.
feed and spray down with like compost teas and things like that.
The you know you talk about you just kind of let them do their thing, and for a lot of things that's I let a lot of stuff do their thing this year, and I
Hmm.
noticed that they did pretty well. Like my wife jumps all over me about it. She says, we got toward the end of the season. She said, could you imagine how big them pumpkins would have been if you would have really tried to do anything with them?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, one of them ended up getting over 1,000 pounds and stuff,
Yeah.
but and I had some other bigger ones, 800 and some pounds or whatever. But you know, I really just wanted to just let things alone. I was more focused on growing a rutabaga over 30 some pounds, right? Like
Right. Right.
I was trying to get one to be the new US record. That was my
Hmm.
goal. And so I was
Yeah.
more focused on those things and just kind of let the pumpkins do whatever. Come to find out that that's kind of how they make land races of different things, right? Like
Right.
they'll
Yeah.
plant, you know, whatever it is, whether it's marijuana, peppers, tomatoes, whatever, they'll plant that specific variety and they'll grow it
Hmm.
out with minimal care.
Yeah.
And whichever plants end up producing the most or the biggest,
Yep.
that's what they keep the
Save the
seeds off of.
seeds.
And
Yep.
they do the same thing year after year until they create a land race variety, and then
Hmm.
that land race variety you take and grow it with maximum effort, and it
Yep.
really produces something
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep.
So after learning that, I said, maybe what I should be doing right now is growing pumpkins with giant pumpkins with
Yeah.
minimal effort,
Yeah.
keeping the biggest of the biggest, right? And the prettiest of
Yep.
the prettiest, minimal effort for the next 2 to 3 years, create a land race, and then grow that with maximum effort 4 years from
Yep.
now and see if we can't grow something spectacular. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it kind of sounds like you were not purposefully, but like me,
Yeah.
indirectly growing land race style,
Yeah.
minimal effort, minimal care. Let's see what happens,
Yeah.
and it sounds like it really worked out good for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now next year, now it's kind of now you get the next season. This next year, we'll get to kind of compare and check notes and all that sort of stuff on what to find out what I think really did the trick for it all. But in the long run, again, too, it's just one of those years where I wasn't really expecting much, and I was only going to do so much. And in the long run, I ended up with all this really great stuff, and just
So how was your, did you have a pepper harvest or tomatoes or cucumbers, any of that? And how did those do?
Oh yeah, we most everything, yeah. And again too, and I guess that's one of the things I would say too that really kind of goes to show the idea of what I'm saying about the idea of feeding versus not feeding too, is that I grow tons of different pepper varieties. And again, not taking the time to feed and to do the things that I would normally do season after season, I saw those effects. I got plenty of peppers because I grow tons of plants. I'm not, lacking of any, but my
Right,
plants weren't as big and vibrant and nice and as they usually are. And tomatoes, I got plenty of tomatoes this year. It's still trying to find the right types for my area, as things have really changed over the years since I first started growing tomatoes. I mean,
right.
when I first started growing tomatoes here in this area, in this alleyway, in this back area here, 12 years ago now, um, those first several years, I grew tons of just great varieties that grew all summer long. And just, I have these really great taste test videos that I would do with my first couple of years with my channel and stuff. All these just awesome varieties that just, everything grew so well. But then the last 4 or 5 years, our summers have been so hot that all those tomatoes I succeeded with in years before are just, they're dropping flowers, or if they do form some fruits, I'll get a 110-degree day and they'll drop those,
Right,
and that's kind of how it works throughout the summer. I mean, I'll get a handful of decent tomatoes that will form and will grow throughout that time, but it's not like it used to be. So the goal has been the last couple of years is to find those varieties that are going to do really well in heat. So I'm still kind of trying to tackle that kind of
right.
project. I do have a couple. One I know is called Red Chief or Big
Okay.
Red Chief, Red Chief or Big Red Chief. That variety is just does amazing during the hot summertime. So I've grown that the last 3 years and done pretty well with it. But I want to find some of these other varieties. I like a lot of variety.
I do too. I'm the same way. Peppers, I grow over 80 some different varieties of peppers. I think I've actually got up to 110 varieties of pepper now.
Oh, nice.
And tomatoes, I think I'm sitting at 85, 90, somewhere in there. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just like that. I just want to grow everything. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
at least two plants of everything I can find, because you never know when you're going to find that one that is perfect for your climate. You know,
Yeah.
it tastes great. It's what you're looking for. You know what I mean? Whether it's a slicer or a canning tomato or a
Yeah.
paste tomato, whatever it is. And then, aesthetically pleasing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's be
Yeah.
honest, as growers, we're not just growing for food. We're growing for what is aesthetically pleasing to us as a
Yes.
grower.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love black beauties. I love blue beauties, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. They're great. But a black beauty here won't grow for nothing. But a blue
Yeah.
beauty will take over and grows
Right.
tremendously well. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's finding those things that we like I said, the taste of, the look of, but also what grows good in our climate, and sometimes that is the hardest part, is to find what grows good
Mm-hmm.
in our climate. Because like you said, you can be growing stuff for a long time and it be doing great in your climate.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, nope, can't grow that no more because for whatever, like here, this year was the coldest year I can remember for a summer for a long time. And it was
Wow.
drought, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just very, very odd, very strange year. Nothing really wanted to grow. My lawn gourds at the end of the season, my lawn gourds, which usually by July are at the top of a 16-foot trellis and coming back
Yeah.
down the other side. At the end of the year in October, they were 8 foot tall.
Oh,
The
geez.
plants, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like y'all were planted
Yep.
months ago. Back in
Mm-hmm.
May, June, and all you are is 8 foot tall. Produced no flowers. Well,
Yeah.
no, produced flowers, but no female flowers,
Yeah.
and had no fruit off of them. I mean, very strange year. And I think my
Yeah.
problem was there wasn't enough heat because long gourds like a lot of heat.
Yep. Yep.
And they're just, the heat wasn't here. And everybody was like, oh, I got long gourds coming out my nose. And it's like, not here. Yeah, there
Yeah,
ain't.
and isn't that, I mean, that's really one of the, and I was going to say strange, but it isn't really strange. I mean, if you really think about it, but it's, as I'm seeing, like this is one of the hotter summers that we've had
Right.
in the last few years, and for you, you're getting these. So wherever there's some difference over here, that's a change and it's different, in this spot makes a change in another spot, like where you're growing
Right.
and
Well,
which is across the country from me, you know what I mean? So I mean, we're all, no matter where we are, seeing some sort of strange behavior in our weather
right.
systems,
Yeah.
whether it's one direction or the other,
Right.
you
And it's
know.
weird because I'm South. I'm in the South, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm 5 to 10 minutes from
You should be
Virginia
cooking
border.
down there.
Yeah, I should be hot. And I'm not, I
Hmm.
mean, my elevation is 2266 here, I think is what it is. All right. And it's just strange. Like I was telling guys the other day, last week, well, the past 2 weeks, it was rifle season here for deer. And I was getting up and going hunting. I'd leave here at the house at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would drive 15 minutes away. And here at the house, it'd be 28, 29 degrees, drive 15
Hmm.
minutes away, and it would be 38, almost 40. And
Yep.
it's like, that's weird
And yeah,
because
and
it
that's
should
a
all be kind of cold. We're pretty close to the same elevation everywhere, but yet it's very weird. You got those, not only do you have climate for your region, but then you have the microclimate,
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
so then you're fighting
And then
two different things.
microclimates are on multiple different level as well too.
Yep,
You know,
exactly.
there's a generalized microclimate, and then you got these, you get down to like, shade from bushes, and these sort of I guess we'll say sub microclimates,
Right.
those sort of things, and that's the thing. And I don't know if you've had any discussions lately or anything about the new USDA zone map,
I was just going to
you know.
ask you about that.
And that was a big thing about some of the talk about that is the adjustment of these different zones, but how localized they've got the information they're using. I mean, they've added thousands. I think there was something like 5,000 new weather stations that they've added to this to this study that put out this new map. But and it made an adjustment. A lot of people, they say around half of the people in the country saw like a half a zone adjustment. But
Yep.
in that map, when you start seeing how it's starting to get more detailed and they're starting to get more information put into it, you start to see what you're talking about there, about how this climate over here, which is just down the road from me,
Right.
or maybe just down so far, is different than where it is right here. And
Yep.
then again, you get into those more micro and sub microclimates and stuff that you have to take into effect. But there's a lot of things. I mean, the one thing I've told people too when it comes to the new zone map and everything like that is it doesn't change much,
Right.
especially for a lot of us and most of us who are growers of food,
Yep.
unless you're growing trees, bushes, strawberries are a perennial, you're looking at perennial food sources, then you're going to want to make sure you're checking out your zone map, see what kind of changes, but it ain't going to do much to anything you're already growing already. So it doesn't make any changes for anybody on those sort of things. And it definitely doesn't give us any information for those of us who are generally annual vegetable growers.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, we can kind of read the weather and say, okay, I need to plant now, or I need to hold off for another week or two, or whatever. What
Yeah.
I think is strange, and I know this has nothing to do with them changing the USDA map, but I just put a post up, I don't know, probably about a month ago. My peach tree hadn't even had all the leaves fall off of it yet and was making new blooms.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It
Yeah.
got cold for like a week straight. And I mean, very, very cold for like a week straight.
Yeah.
The blooms went away. And I thought, okay, it's done for the winter. Blooms are back out there again on it now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, bro, you need to take a break.
See,
Yeah.
and that
Just take
just
a break.
gets, yeah, see, and that just gets to show you that it isn't just us who are noticing the changes in weather. I mean,
Right.
our trees, especially your trees that are gonna, again, perennials that are gonna go through this dormant period and then regrow again this in the next season. Well, if it doesn't know if the next season is now because it feels like it, but
Right.
it's not, but wait a minute, it's
Right. I mean,
it,
it's all, the
so even our
weather's tricking
plants
it.
don't know what to do.
Right. Exactly. They're being tricked, and that warm is making them send those hormones out to grow. You know, back in the early spring, me and a buddy of mine who's in the chat right now, Hematite Homestead, we were tapping our maple trees, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we didn't get any really maple sap to speak of
Wow.
because it wasn't getting cold enough at night to warm back up in the day to send that maple sap up through to really tap it. So I
Right.
think I got like 5 or 6 gallons. Yeah, like 5 or 6 gallons is all I got. I'm not sure how much he got. If he's still in the chat, I'd like to hear how much it was exactly. But
Yeah.
the trees were just like, oh, well, it's not cold, so all the sap
Yeah.
just went up, and because you got to have those cold nights, those
Yeah.
freezing nights, in order to get the sap to come out, and it wasn't doing the job this year. So it is very,
Wow.
very strange how everything's going, and
Mhm.
all summer long I heard everybody up north, Michigan, Minnesota, and all that talking about, oh, it's sweltering hot, it's blistering hot, and everything's dying, and I'm sitting down here in West Virginia where
Yeah.
I'm used to that kind of heat, and I'm
Right.
like,
What's going on?
yeah, like, how do you got
There's
heat and
you've
I don't?
you traded climates,
Right. Yeah,
and
and it's
again
so weird.
shows that sense of like, well, one weird thing over here means it's going to be weird over there too, because
Right.
those climates, whether it's north, midwest, south, east, that they all kind of work off each other in jet streams, and
Right.
they're all influencing each other in some sort of way. So when things get strange in one place, they're going to most likely get strange everywhere else too. It's
Right.
just about
Yeah.
it's just all about what direction it's going to go. Is it going to go in the cooler direction for people who are used to it being hot, or is it going to be warmer for people who are, for me, like I'm used to more of moderate
Right.
warm weather, moderate
Yeah,
warm
y'all got like a
weather.
temperate.
We're getting extreme hot weather,
Right.
during our summertime, and again, like you're saying, up in Minnesota and places like that, that's a mild summer,
He
if
says he
they're
got
blistering heat,
right. He says he got 80 gallons
oh, yep.
and used to getting 40 to 80 gallons a day. So
Oh,
basically,
wow.
the Ram good stopped sat for about 4 days. Says he thinks I may start on Groundhog Day this year instead of Valentine's Day.
How many
So, I mean,
trees? How
you
many
think
trees
about,
though?
huh?
How many trees? I mean, you have 40 to 80 gallons a day that he's used to. How many
Yeah.
trees are you
How many
tapping?
trees is that, Stephen, please? Um,
And that's
right,
sap.
right, right. Yeah, that's sap, not syrup, right? Because you boil that down and you don't even get half of that, because it takes, that's a long process, very long process.
Yeah.
16 trees.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've only got two of them down here that I got, so
Right. Right.
that I've found so far. I found more this summer that I marked, but that was all I
Mhm.
found last year. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll see how many more I can get this year. So, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it is very, very strange. Like you said, the jet stream and all that stuff kind of affects, how the heat is and how things go. But what's weird to me, and what I thought was strange about the USDA coming out with that new diagram for it was extreme heat in the north, and there was a lot of extreme heat in the south, and I'm in the middle, it's like the
Mhm.
extreme
Yeah.
south, right? And I'm in the middle, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of mild this year. And so
Yeah.
that goes back to the jet stream thing, how the jet
Yeah.
stream's pushing and pulling and manipulating the weather. And so
Yeah.
whenever that new USD zone come out, I was kind of like, well, why did y'all change? Why did y'all bump me up when I was actually colder?
Because,
You
well,
know?
the reason behind that is because it's not what you're going to see this year. It's not what you're going to see next year, in that sort of sense. It's an average of 30 years. And what they're averaging, though, and this is where a lot of people get confused about what the zones and zone maps are and what they mean, is that what it's telling you and is that what your most extreme low is going to be.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's through any point in time in the year. Obviously, it's going to be winter time, right?
Right.
So, what your most extreme low is, and they take that for each of these weather stations. I think there's like 13,000 weather stations across the US that they take information from, and they take the lowest temperature from each station, each year, and then
Right.
average those out in 30 years. So, 2012 was the last update to the USDA zone map, and that
Okay.
was
So almost 12 years ago.
yeah, so that was a 30-year average then, but so now they've basically lopped off that 12 years from the bottom end of that last average, and
Right.
then added the 30 years now up to where we are. So adding that 12 years since the last update into it, for this year. And so it's given us that new average. That's what kind of pushed kind of some of those zones a little bit. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people put too much into what the zone map is saying. It doesn't
Right.
tell you really too much as an average gardener. Again, like I was saying, it's giving you that extreme low temperature. What I would like to see the USDA do, because what we've talked about a lot isn't what the coldest temperatures are doing. I mean, we've been talking about summer heat and what it's
Right.
affecting our crops and stuff. I'd like to see them do a USDA map or even a zone type of map of what the most extreme high temperatures are.
That would be
You know what I
great
mean?
because
Have two different maps, one that's showing you your extremist lows and your
right.
extreme highs, and then maybe some way to even kind of mold those together to give you more of a generalized idea of what a zone is.
That would actually be very, very good. I mean, it would take a lot of work, but I mean, even us as gardeners, growers, we could kind of come up with our own little thing. I
Right.
mean, the USDA
Yeah.
would be a lot better if they would do it because they got all the technology and all
Well, they
the
got them
information.
thirteen
Right,
thousand
right,
weather
exactly.
stations, and they
But
really all they
but
have to do is do the opposite, grab the highest temperature, average
right,
it over 30 years, and
that
then
would
do the
be
same thing.
that
Yeah.
would be very good because, like you said, that's what we need to know. We don't necessarily need to know the coldest because we can, we're not growing pretty in the cold very much. You know what I mean? Like, at
Yeah.
least I'm not. You know what I mean? I've got stuff out in the greenhouse and other places trying to grow and survive that will probably survive unless we get another Arctic blast like we did last December whenever it
Yeah.
got negative, I think
Yeah.
negative 30 here or something like that. And it killed everything. It even killed my
Oh
fig
yeah.
trees.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, unless we get that cold, most of my stuff out there right now will survive. My kohlrabi is still growing, my beets
Hmm.
and stuff like that. They're all still growing
Yeah.
slowly, but they're growing.
And
Um,
see, and
right.
that's the key right there though. So your kohlrabi and your beets these are annual plants. These are things that you're growing each season, you're starting from seed, and they're going to die or be done with when you harvest them, that sort of thing. And those zones aren't telling us anything when it comes to those.
Right.
Your best bet, and this is what I tell people when they're talking about zones, and then they talk about growing tomatoes or they're talking about growing some other, annual type of plant. And I'm like, well, what you're really looking at for your indicators of when to plant and that sort of thing for those types of things are your first and last frost date. So
Yep.
your average first frost date is going to tell you, well, a couple of weeks from that is when I want to, make sure I'm starting up all these sort of things so that they're ready to go outside on that
Yep.
day, or right
And
around that
sometimes you
day.
can't even go by that.
Yeah, I mean, again, averages. I mean, the best
Yep.
we can do is give averages to give you a
Right.
generalized idea. We really have to go on our own instincts and that sort of thing. And sometimes, it looks like everything's just fine for a couple of weeks
And
out.
then,
You're looking at the weather and everything, and get everything all planted, and then you come back a couple of days later, and they've adjusted to the next few days. And you go, oh no, there's a frost coming. Now you got to
yep.
protect everything because
Yep.
you wanted to jump ahead of everything, which we all want to do. And
Yep.
if we
Exactly.
and if we can get away with it, it even works out better for us. So
Oh,
there's
yeah.
incentive to jump out early and to do that sort of stuff. But you just got to be kind of prepared for that sort of thing, you know.
I wonder if it wouldn't be productive or whatever you want to say to grow. Let's say you're going to grow tomatoes and
Hmm.
you plant out your tomatoes early by what the average was. but you have some stationary ones just in case, some backups, just in
Yeah.
case, a frost comes, right?
Yeah.
And then plant those out in case your stuff gets killed. I've never
Mhm.
done that because there's so much that I plant. There's not really any room for backups.
Yeah.
But I've thought about doing that before. Have you ever did anything like that? Have you ever planted backups in case a frost comes and then plant those out?
Well, my first couple of unsuccessful seasons on a couple of different things really pushed me to try making sure I have plenty when I grow. So, I'll start, say, pepper plants. I'll do those 72 uh, trays with the
Right,
72 slots to grow them in. And I'll grow 3 or 4 of those. And I probably do maybe, I think most I've done was like 40 varieties of peppers, right? So I'll do like maybe 4 trays of those and fit those 40 varieties in there and get me a bunch of plants where I'm only going to grow 1 or 2 of each of those varieties.
right,
But I'll grow out 10 or 12 of each variety in order to make sure I'm getting, well, first the best one. I'm gonna get the
right,
best start and all of that out of
right.
there. But then the other thing is in case something happens again, I'll have backups.
Yeah.
And so when I plant them outdoors and I'll have those extra ones, I'll keep those to the side for a week or two just to be sure, so I
Okay.
can jump in and do exactly that, jump ahead of my average frost date and see if I can't get them out early because
Right.
I grow them and start them indoors. They start under some lights here indoors, during late winter, early spring, and I grow them until they get so big in smaller pots right here indoors.
Yep.
And you go through all of that, and they're just you want to get them out as early as possible out into that sun because it's just
Right.
indoor light.
Right.
Whether I'm using these fluorescents or whatever, it's just indoor light. They want sunlight. They
Yes,
want,
they do.
they want all of that outdoor stuff. Not only that, you want them to get resilient to the weather and everything, because that helps build their ability to produce better. But and that's the thing. I don't want to like not have plants, so I always grow more and start more than what I'm going to need to make sure that I'm going to
My
have plenty.
the thing that I've always done is I'll grow them and I'll be so reluctant to put them out that I wait an extra week or two. And by the time I put them out, a lot of these things are flowering or have
Hmm.
peppers growing on them already. And I'm setting them in the ground. They've already got peppers growing on them. I'm
Oh,
like,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
like, and then it's like, well, I probably should pull them peppers off because they need to focus on growing and not producing peppers, So then you got to rip all the peppers off and
Yeah.
everything. And, it's just, it's trying to figure out that balance.
Yeah.
And I, wouldn't it
And
have
it's the
been
fun.
nice?
It's the fun of it all. It's what we're out there for, is that
Right,
experience and the challenge and seeking that balance,
right.
because that's what we want to do. We want to control this stuff. You know what
Yep,
I mean? And have control of it. And again, talk about the environmental factors and all those sort of things that kind of play around with our ability to actually do that. But that's the fun of the whole idea of gardening and growing,
it
as long
is.
as we're getting something out of it anyways, in some sort of way, because I grow plenty of stuff I can have fun and play around with and experiment and do all sorts of stuff with all different sorts of things and still end up with plenty
Right,
out
right.
of it,
Yep. So I was watching this guy. Um, he's all over YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. He's really really intelligent. He's the guy that talks about one of the famous videos that I've seen floating around. I'm sure you've seen it. Is he answers this professor? Well, if there was no God, or this one
Right.
guy, I guess the professor tries to tell him that there is no God. He said, well, if there was no God, then how does something come from nothing? And he describes all this
Right.
stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
sure, like I said, I'm sure you've heard the video, but he's got several little channels on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And so I was watching him, and he said, he was describing how the Earth is now on an axis spinning slanted, right?
Hmm.
He said that he believed back before the Earth was on a slant and spinning, and stuff, back whenever Adam and Eve was in the garden, that you had equal amount of sunlight 12 hours and 12 hours a night, 12 hours a day, and that it wasn't setting on a slant, that it was setting straight up and down, spinning and going around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And that because there was 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, and it was angled the way, straight up and down, that everybody north and south had the same climate temperature of, probably 75, 80 degrees. And that was all, right. And everything grew in excess because it had equal of everything. And I was sitting there and I was like, that would be very cool. If you know what I mean? Like if we didn't have to worry about that anymore, like, oh yeah, just, just the thought of that, whether it was true or not, just the thought of that to me is cool, because think about being able to have 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of dark, and the same temperature year round all the time. Like that would be, that would be a gardener's paradise. You know what I mean? So like you would have to watch the video. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you again. Send it over to you so you can watch it. It was, the way he explained it was just like, just to think about that was very, very cool, because I've always wondered
if things worked evenly and nicely for our favor, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Because you hear about people who live in like Hawaii or other places like that, right? Where they pretty much have the same temperature year round, kind of, it's not that big of a difference. But then having met and having friends that are from Hawaii now and live in Hawaii now, it's they don't get to grow like that. You know what I mean? Like you would think they could, but to talk to them, they're like, no, it don't work like that. We still have the seasons, and it's more of a rainy season versus.
I know you would still have that curve of the earth. So there would be differences between the north and the south, definitely, and the equator would still be the closest to the sun. So there would still be that sort of sense. But I see what you're saying is that if it's just doing that, it's even, no matter where you are. It's always even.
Yep. Exactly.
And boy, and again too, wouldn't that be nice? It would be so great.
It would be very
nice. Know
nice.
what you can expect and to know it's going to be this, and it works in even fashion. But that would be great. Very cool, in our sense of wanting to control our spaces and to be able to get the outcomes that we're looking for, to have those sort of things work in our favor would just be amazing.
Right. Absolutely. Because then you wouldn't have to worry about if it's long day onion, short day onion, intermediate, and it was like I was saying, though, talking to my friends in Hawaii, I was like, well, you guys got pretty mild temperatures all throughout the year. So if I lived there, I'd be growing this, and this right now. And they're like, yeah, you would think that, but we've got X, Y, and Z challenges that we face. The rainy season comes in and kills everything in the wintertime. So it might be mild, but humidity, the rain is too much.
Rain.
It's so crazy though. Like, just those different, places that we think of paradise, like Hawaii and other places over here, like Florida and stuff like that. We think those are just wonderful places, but even they have their own set of challenges that they face.
Especially, when it comes to growing the things that we like to grow, tomatoes and all that sort of stuff, you talk about kohlrabis and beets and things like that, and I'm not too sure, but those sort of things change. You get into some of those tropical areas and more or subtropical regions and that sort of stuff, especially Florida, Hawaii, as you're saying. But that they get all this awesome stuff that they get to grow.
Yeah, they
do. Can't grow either.
Right. Yep. Lots of awesome stuff that we can't grow.
So I'm sure the jealousy works both directions still.
It does. It does. Have you ever seen Jim Kovaleski on YouTube?
Oh yeah. I followed him for many years.
That guy is crazy insane what he does in Florida in the wintertime, and then goes up to Maine in the summer and grows, and then comes back down to Florida in the winter. I'm always wanting more when he goes down to Florida, because Pete, I can't think of his last name, but he's the one that videos Jim a lot, and so I always like winter because I know I'm going to get a lot of Jim. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
He's a plethora of knowledge that it just blows me away how he does things,
Oh, I
because
mean, it's just the dream life in a sense.
yeah,
In my
right,
mind, for the things
right.
I like, for the things I enjoy. I remember when I first ever heard of him, and I think he was probably introduced to most of the internet world by Justin Rhodes
Yep.
years ago. In fact, I'm sure that's how him and Pete got connected together. Um, but I remember seeing that and him sharing that story with them. And I think that was right at the beginning of what was their Great American Farm Tour. They did this
Yeah.
thing across the country, which was amazing. It was so cool to be able to do something like that. But I remember first seeing what Jim was doing. I'm like, man, because at the same time I was following another guy. His name's Chris, but he had a channel called the Urban Farmer, which is
Okay.
different. I got the Urban Gardener. He was the Urban Farmer, I think. But yeah, he's put out a book too. I think he's got a pretty successful book. Had a whole program on utilizing yard spaces, borrowing spaces and yards from people in order to grow and build your own farm.
Oh,
Instead of
that's
having your
cool.
own, instead of having your own property, you just put some ads in your local, you know, bulletin boards or
Right.
or nowadays, Facebook groups or different things like that. But you know, uh, you just ask people like, hey, you got a yard you're not using? I'll share some vegetables if you let me grow some stuff on it. And this is what this guy did. He built a whole system up in Kelowna, BC,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, built this whole system and started training and showing people. So I was following along with a lot of that at this time that I was had watched the video of Jim Kovaleski, and when I saw and had those saw what he was doing in the similar sense and applying some things that this guy I was learning about this from, I was like, man, this is what I want to do, because that's really before I started YouTube. For a couple of years before that, that's where I was heading towards.
Right.
I was going to try to work my way towards that type of urban farming model of borrowing spaces and doing that sort of thing. And
Right.
Jim Kovaleski was a huge influence on that, and still today, just maybe someday all of this will wind down or something, and I'll go into retirement and do something just the same. The following the seasons like that.
Right.
Going
That would
from
be great.
Maine to Florida and just getting to do things year round and market garden year round. And, it makes, enough money to just make it all happen.
Right.
Just
I mean, well,
really
they,
inspiring.
it is very inspiring. Last year, they said, and they said they were used to getting $3,500 a week off of the garden down there in Florida, and they
Wow.
had weeks that were exceeding 10,000 last year.
Wow.
And I mean, my mind was just, because you think about what he's making money on. He's not
Yep.
making money on big produce items like cucumbers and tomatoes. He's
No.
making it off of carrots, Swiss chard, arugula, radishes, beets, turnips,
Mhm.
kohlrabi, things like that. He's not making it off of what we think of big ticket items like I said,
Yeah.
cucumbers, tomatoes,
Yeah.
watermelons, cantaloupes, things like that. It's all coming off of root crops and greens. 10 grand in 1 week off of root crops and greens, you're doing something right, you know?
Yeah.
And then the system of replacing what he
Yep.
picks
Yep.
is
Just the
just,
systems he's built.
yeah,
He's left there's nothing unchecked or unturned or not in some sort of process of producing.
right.
If there's an empty space in his yard,
Yep.
that's on purpose. It's
Yep.
being prepared right there. It's about ready to be set for something new. You
Right.
know what I mean? It is, so I mean, I just, again, too, it was so inspiring. I mean, to see, again, like I was saying with Chris's system that he was setting up in Kelowna, BC, but then to see someone doing it over on the East Coast and going to, again, from the Northeast all the way down to the Southeast in
Right.
Florida, and be able to make both of those work like that and
Yep.
all around the year. In BC, I mean, there's only so much you can do during the wintertime.
Right.
So I'm sure his production and sales and things like that start to kind of come down a little bit.
Right.
But Jim's found the way around that, you know.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to get all this really good stuff that, you know, are big ticket items and great things for the Northeast. We'll grow a bunch of those. We'll save some of them and take them down south with me too, you
Yep.
know, and then, but also make it, you know, it's just, and then go and do the southern during the winter time and find and just have the systems like you're saying in
Yeah.
place just to make it optimized to the most where you're making, like I said, I can imagine he's totally making a ton of money
I don't know
like
how he
that
sleeps.
because yeah, yeah, you
You know what
gotta,
I
yeah,
mean?
you
Like,
got, I mean, I don't know either. I mean, believe me, I got myself busy in so many things myself when it
right.
comes to growing and gardening. But yeah, to have things so dialed in like that to where every day something's going on and coming out and
Right.
yeah, it's just
Well, I mean, you think about this. He cuts his grass with a mowing scythe.
yeah, I
Goes
know,
out there with
right?
a scythe. The rest of us would be
Yeah,
like, I'm pushing a mower and I'm cutting it, you know? No,
yeah,
he cuts it with a scythe and
sorry.
lays it and then plants stuff on top of it. I mean,
Yep.
it blows my mind. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, I don't know where you got time to rest. Like, I would be so like a squirrel on crack trying to keep up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
just running around trying to keep up with this
yep,
stuff. I mean, and he does it effortlessly. I mean,
yeah,
so effortlessly. It all flows together. And that guy that he's got down there living in Florida now full time in the houses, what a blessing that would be to be able to
mhm,
learn and glean from him
yeah,
and take over the land that he's worked and built on. You know, I mean,
yeah,
that would be tremendous. Like that kid, he's got a dream come true down there. And you know, I don't know that he even fully grasps what he has, you know, because
mhm.
it's just crazy. I
I mean,
mean,
I literally thought about it. I mean, years ago when I was first following this and thinking about doing this as the direction I wanted to go, I really thought about just taking a trip down to Florida and showing up at one of his markets and being like, "Hey, you don't mind? I'm going to be here for like a week or two. Can I follow you around? Can I
right?
just like take notes? Can you like, I want to get a little class specifically from you and see exactly how this works. Like, just totally like, you know, shadow you for like a week or two just to get that information. But yeah, because I was totally down for that. That was totally where I was heading was to
Right.
you know was to do some market gardening on that level.
I mean, where you're at now, do you think you could do market gardening on that level, or would you have to get more property?
Well, you definitely, and that's the key to it though, is having like even Jim has these multiple different yards he's using, you know, and that's the and depending on what you're looking to produce and how much you're looking to produce in order to, you know, have a viable business to
Right.
generate the money that you need in order to keep it rolling. You probably do have to find other spaces, and that's what makes that model and like I was saying with what um, Christopher was doing with his model is borrowing spaces. So, you know, I would just go around my neighborhood or again hit the bulletins or Facebook groups here locally and ask people, you know, hey, you got a front yard or backyard that you don't mind me growing some food out of, and I'll share the food with you.
Right.
And, you know, and find multiple different places in order to do that. And I would, and I could, I just, you know, again, I had to choose one direction because, like you're saying, I don't know how he sleeps at night. It takes a lot of work to do that. I mean, and that's farming, you know, that's
Yep.
farming work in general. You know what I mean? You got to be up with the roosters and,
For sure.
you know, down at dusk, you know, and you got to be working hard all those hours too in order to make sure that stuff happens, you know. And again, it's the same thing too here that I'm doing in a way as far as content creation and our channel and our show and all that sort of stuff that we're doing here and the multiple different gardens I've got. It's so much time it takes to do that. So I'd
Yep.
have to give this up to do that, you know, or vice versa. And that was what the decision finally came down to is that I had a higher interest in video creation,
Right.
journalism, you
Now,
know, that sort of stuff.
tell me how somebody like Grow Your Greens, right? I
John
can't think of his
Kohler,
name. Huh?
John Kohler.
John Kohler.
Yeah,
How does he grow all that he does and still have time for YouTube?
right. Well, one of his keys is he never grows anything from seed.
Okay.
Yeah. He and does a lot of, well, I'm going to set my plants up good and I'm going to let them do their thing. So he's in automated water systems, all that sort of stuff, and then, you're just buying plants and planting them in. And again, he has some methods that he uses for when he plants them and stuff like that, that gets them growing really strong and all of that. But yeah, I know that's one of the things he talks about as a time saver that he uses, because there's a lot. I mean, and I can see it totally. It takes a lot to grow something from seed.
It does.
There's a bunch of extra work and hours that come along with doing that. Whereas you just go to a garden center, grab up
Right.
a couple of flats of plant starts, and that's an afternoon, and boom, 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 you got a whole garden set up.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does it because he's busy with other business stuff that he does. He runs a couple of other businesses and stuff. So I
Right.
mean, it isn't just his gardening channel that he does. He's more
Right.
into juicing and juicers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I just saw him. I just saw him a few weeks back at the National Heirloom Exposition.
how'd that go out there? Was it nice out there?
Yeah, it was actually really nice. It was really cool. It was a little bit further away than what I was expecting from where I got a place to stay. I have a friend down in Los Angeles that I got to stay down there with. But so the exposition was a little further in Venice Beach than it was, or Ventura Beach. The Ventura County Fairgrounds is where it was. So it took me a while to drive out there each time I had to go out there, but it was great. I mean, new place for them. It was a really great event up in Sonoma County where they had it in North Bay, Northern California. And but they had a ton of people. They had a lot of good stuff, and a really good start for them. They haven't been able to put on that exposition for 3-4 years.
Right.
The COVID year, and then they took an extra year because of timing and things that they were trying to work out with the Sonoma County Fairground, which ended up changing things to Ventura County Fairgrounds in Southern California. Was part of what happened in that extra year they took. But yeah, so I see great potential for it moving forward. And
Cool.
it was a really fun event for that place. And it was cool to get to see a bunch of people that I haven't got to see, for a while.
Wife's messing with the incubator. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Yeah, so I always want to go out there and check it out because I've seen it on his channel a lot, and I'm like, man, that would be so cool to get out there and get to see that stuff. I mean, it
yeah.
just looks amazing. So
Yeah, it makes
just
for a great, it's and I think that's one of the cool things about it being in the Los Angeles area like that is now it becomes something where people like yourself from around the country can make a vacation out of going to Los Angeles. You know what I mean?
right.
So not just the Heirloom Exposition, but you can do all this other stuff.
So
Whereas they were a little more secluded in Northern California as far as that's concerned. So people can really make a journey out there and have much more to do and really make a vacation out of it.
now I'm a pretty country boy, right? I'm not much into city stuff.
Yeah.
So I would have probably felt more at home up north in Northern California. But what's the vibe like in LA? Because I mean, you got to think I'm from West Virginia. We look at LA like, oh, that's a no place. You don't go to LA. Unless you're looking to get mugged or shot.
Oh no, that can happen anywhere in any backyard. We just had
Right.
a shooting. I live in a small city here, Medford, Oregon, Southern Oregon, and we just had a shooting right, not too far from me here, just a couple of days ago. I mean, these are the dangers of living, in modern world, I suppose, all over the
Right.
country, and and the thing though too, for me, and especially in kind of my little niche of gardening, is urban gardening, small space gardening, community gardens, all that sort of stuff, rooftop gardens. You just imagine all these little side niches of gardening, and Los Angeles is a mecca for this. It's just a mecca.
That's
they've
cool.
got over 200 community gardens throughout the different neighborhoods and areas of the Los Angeles County. There's so many people doing things in the growing world and gardening and all of that. Just I could do my channel from Los Angeles in perpetuity from Los Angeles only, and have so many stories to tell and show people of small space gardeners and growers and organizations and all these different things. I just I did a video while I was down there of a really cool organization too, just as an example, is a one called Crop Swap LA, and this is a was started by a gentleman named Jemiah Hargans, and he when he had his first kid was just kind of worried about food and what he was going to feed his kid and where he lived in Los Angeles and that sort of stuff, which inspired him to start um, creating some ideas around what he could do to grow food in
Right.
his own home, in his own space. And he developed this into a whole organization that eventually started some micro farms with water recycling systems,
That's cool.
using a terraponics type of situation that they have. And he's built a couple of different micro farms. They're about to open one out of their local high school as well, which will be a farm that these kids can learn about agriculture and growing and doing all of that right in the middle of a city, in areas that would be considered food deserts.
Right.
So for a lot of folks who live in more country or rural areas, and even I'm considered like that as well,
Right.
we don't see that. I have got local access to good nutritious food
Yep.
just right here. And these
Right.
places in these big cities like this, they become food deserts because they just get so expanded out that in these centers, especially in the poorer neighborhoods,
Right.
and for him, these black neighborhoods of central Los Angeles,
Yep.
there's just no access to really good nutritious food. So he started building this organization to address that, and has
That's
built this
cool.
amazing program. And I can't wait to put the video out. In fact, if anybody wanted to see anything about it, John Kohler recently put his video out. We both met up together. I introduced him to Jemiah there and all of that, and John went and did a video. And I know he put one out on his channel. And I've also had him on as like Jemiah Hargans, the Crop Swap LA guy, on my show Let's Get Growing as well too. And at the end of the show, he actually takes us on a little tour of his Degnan micro farm, which is outside of his house.
That's
And
cool.
it's some of the coolest stuff you'll ever see, dude. I'm not even
That's
kidding
awesome.
you. And that's
Yeah.
happening in this city, and there are those things that we think of, and that when it comes to big cities. But I think some of those more amazing things when it comes to gardening and growing, and the science and technology of what that means for a growing, population of human beings across the world. We have to learn about food in different ways.
Right.
Um, and especially in those sort of situations, and see people and see those types of stories like that are awesome. And that's kind of what I got into, and why I went the different direction of not going market gardening and growing out of people's lawns and creating my own farm and doing content creation, because I had more of a video photography background in journalism. I wanted to tell
Right.
stories and make videos and show people that these sort of things exist, and how cool
They
they are,
can
and
do
all
it.
that, and that it can be done,
Right.
and yeah. So again too, so I'm sure, if you did ever make a trip, I'd set you up with so many different things you could go and check out and see how cool they are.
Shoot. Yeah.
You'd have so much fun, you and your family and all of that.
Mate.
And then the cool thing about getting back to the Heirloom Exposition itself is that what the Heirloom Exposition does is it brought the country to Los Angeles.
Right.
You know what I mean? They've got the bluegrass bands playing all day long out there, all the big old hay bales everywhere, and all these squash and melons and things
That's
all
cool.
over the place. They have a poultry show, so they got all these different, all
Oh,
this
the
different
wife would
stuff.
love that.
Seed shows, seed swaps, they got the big main exhibition where they show all these hundreds of different varieties of different things that they have grown out for exhibition and all of that. And then of course you like the giants, they got their giant exhibit, all that sort of stuff. So they're bringing that kind of country Missouri, which is where Baker Creek is from.
Right.
They're bringing Missouri to Los Angeles. You know what I mean?
That's
And
cool.
I think that was one of the things that was the coolest to see, is you see all these city folk coming in here to check out what's going on. And they're like, oh wow, this is great. We got all these people, there's bluegrass bands playing, and it's just,
That's awesome.
they're bringing the country there. So, you feel right at home when it comes to that part of it.
Heck yeah, that'd be great, man. I would like to do that one day and meet up with you out there. That'd be cool.
Heck yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The only drawback to it, as far as families are concerned, I think really, but I think it's worth it when it comes down to it. It's right at the beginning of September, so a lot of schools are getting started at that time, and
right,
it's a midweek thing. They do it midweek on purpose because they create. They're still working on more in Los Angeles. They had a great situation in Northern California, but they work with local schools. And so they have the show during the middle of the week on purpose so that school kids can do, and schools can take their kids out there on field trips. So you get
right.
whole classrooms of kids checking out what's going on there and
You
stuff.
get
There
them
were a few
involved
of
in
them
it.
that happened. There were a few that they had there, but they used to have like dozens of schools in the area for the Northern California area. And the coolest thing about the National Heirloom Exposition put on by Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company is that it's basically a non-profit event.
Right.
Every bit of money that they make off of that goes into their school gardening programs that they do
That's
from Baker Creek.
that's cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I know that whatever money they raised will get worked into how they work their situation and their get more schools, help fund
Right.
some of those schools and get gardens set up, in that Los Angeles area and start bringing them in for their field trips and things like that for next year.
I love Baker Creek. Now I love Baker Creek even more now. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean that's all, really outside of giant seeds. That's the only seeds I grow now. Because if it don't come
Yeah.
from Baker Creek, I don't grow it. I mean,
Yeah.
unless it was something that I couldn't find there and I found it somewhere else, which is very, very rare. They have to
Hmm.
be sold out of stock for a long time before I'll commit to buying something from somewhere else. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. That is
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
I have a couple of other smaller seed companies that I get some of the essentials for. But when it comes to most everything, and especially if I'm trying to bring variety into my
Right.
garden, I'm definitely looking at Baker Creek. And and I'm telling you, if anybody in your audience hasn't had a chance to check out their whole seed catalog, I
Oh
mean,
man.
that thing gets me through the wintertime, man.
Yep. Yep. Because by the time I'm done with looking through it, I've about bought everything in it. I mean,
That is the big risk of that too. Is that,
yeah,
and they just got their photography and all that sort of stuff dialed down. They grow so many amazing, different, unique heirloom varieties of
they do.
things that
And
it's hard not to buy almost
it is.
as much as you could possibly afford.
Yep, it
Maybe
is.
even
And
get in a little debt. Maybe you get in a little debt.
right, right. And here's the thing though. They'll even in some cases you can end up growing for them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and they're always looking for people to do grow trials for them,
Yep.
and those one things they did run into this last year, and I know that there were some people giving them some criticism. There were some people who grew for them in a couple of situations where there's some mix-ups. Not to say mix-ups or maybe even cross-pollinations that might have happened in some situations that things weren't
Right.
secluded or isolated properly. And so some people did experience some issues with the results or what it was they actually got from the seeds
Right.
that they were growing and stuff. But it's another thing about Baker Creek. They'll take care of that.
Yep. They sure
They'll take
will.
care of that.
All you gotta do is call them and tell them what the batch number was, and
Yep.
they'll send
and
another one out.
send you some free stuff along with it too.
Yep.
So their customer service is amazing,
It
and
is.
it all revolves around the leadership of their company. And Jared
Yep.
Gettle, he started that company was a teenager.
Yes, he
Was
did.
a teenager collecting heirloom seeds and started this company and built this into what it is. And you can tell from the way he is and his lifestyle and that sort of stuff is that they're not in it for big profits and everything.
Nope.
I mean, all of this success that they've had and why they're known around the world is because of how good they do things.
Yep.
You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? It's how, and and he knew when they came across the idea of doing that whole seed catalog, that this is gonna, people are gonna like this, and they put it
Yep.
out there, and it became what it became because, I mean, no one else is making that sort of thing. I mean, and again, too, if people don't know, I mean, if you remember, like when you're younger, and I'm not sure if you're even young enough to remember or old enough to remember, but the Sears catalog used
Yep.
to be this, or even Toys R Us would put out one
Yep.
too.
Christmas catalogs,
the
man.
Christmas
Yep.
catalogs, and
Love them things.
that's what they did. It wasn't just this basic, free catalog, which they have the basic free catalog
Right.
you can sign up for as well too. But you have this thing and it's just huge and it's full. And like I said, man, when I'm feeling those winter blues, man, I just pull that thing out and start flipping through the pages, and man, I smiles come to my face,
Yep.
like every
Like,
time
ooh, I want to
turn
grow
through
that.
it.
I want to grow this.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
literally like that 10-year-old going through the Sears Christmas catalog page by page. I want this. I want that. That's how it makes you feel. And by the time spring rolls around, my wife hates me. She's like, "Do you realize where are you going to grow all this stuff at?" Literally, look. If I was to show people how many seeds I have, they would think I was a nut. Because I've got totes stacked, big totes stacked full of seeds from either them that I've bought or ones that I've grown from them that I've saved.
Yeah, that's a great thing. They sell heirlooms if it produces a seed, and you save that seed and you never have to buy it again.
Exactly. Never, ever again. And it's great to know that. So I know you've been on here for a while with me. I don't want to hold you too much longer. One last question. You said you had some new things going on?
Yeah. Real quick though, too, is I'll
that?
just say, if anybody really wants to know more and understand the story of Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company, I did have him on my Let's Get Growing show. So I had Jared Gettle on, and he tells us all about how he got started, how all the seed catalogs got started, and how the company grew and all that sort of stuff. It was a really great interview with him. I'd encourage people to go check that out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All about how the whole seed catalog came about and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, man, again, like I was saying, get me excited. Yeah, just get me on this subject because I get even more excited about it. But as I mentioned, I had a new owner who bought this place, and he's actually reminds he actually looks a bit like you. Got a nice long red beard and everything, But he's a great guy, young kid, bought this place, military, got out of the military, took his money, invested it right in this place. So he's not only
might be my twin,
right?
I was in the military too, man. Like, he's my twin, my doppelganger.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so not only is he the owner of this place, but it's a duplex, so he's my neighbor as well.
Okay, cool.
And so, again, just doing whatever and starting to build a relationship with him as he bought the place and stuff. It kind of got more to the idea of like, oh, this guy really digs what I'm doing and doesn't mind me doing this or doing that. And so I set up an early fall, late summer barbecue that we could all do together, invited my kids over and him and his friend and girlfriend and stuff like that. And we all had this barbecue and everything. And I did it. I was like, man, I'm going to get a barbecue. I'm going to set this up, and then I'm going to hit him with all these ideas I have. You know what I mean? Like, see where
he stands.
Where he stands, what my limits are, right? So we do this, we're eating and everything, and I was like, okay, man, I got to tell you, I got some ideas and all this sort of stuff of some things I want to do. And I started to tell him about how when I first started gardening here, I was growing peppers up on our carport rooftop. So I had a rooftop garden of container peppers up there. So I was like, yeah, when I first moved here, I was growing peppers up on the rooftop of the carport. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, dude, that would be cool. You want to do that again? Do it. I was like, yeah, I totally do. And he's like, go for it. And then he turns it to me and he says, in fact, it doesn't matter what you want to do, man. Whatever it is, I don't care. You want to build raised beds out of the front yards and turn that all into the front yard. I mean, the two different front yards into a gardens out there, go for it. You want to do this back here, you want to go on the rooftop, you want to do that, whatever. He's like, go for it. I was like,
that's
oh,
cool.
Man. I'm like, oh man, you don't know what you've done. You just released the crack in here, basically.
That's
so
funny.
yeah, that's what's kind of exciting now, is that over this next year I'm going to get to put in some raised beds. We're going to basically raise bed and wood chip the whole front yards out, and so I should probably get a whole bunch of beds out of that. And then again, we're going to put our rooftop garden back up there, as well as I'm going to try to get some beehives up there.
Oh, that's going to be great.
And this back area that we share in the back part where it runs along the alleyway in the back along the fence line there is just enough area that we're going to put in a chicken coop. So we're going to get
Cool.
ourselves some chickens
There you
too,
go.
So we're going to have a
Yeah.
whole like little small urban homestead that we're finally going to get to turn this into.
That's going to be great.
Oh
Now,
man, I'm
now
like
I
so
already got to
super
go. I already got
excited
to
about
ask.
all this stuff.
I already got to ask. Now you done got me excited. So what time next year do you plan on having all that kind of squared away? Like by July or something, or
Yeah,
just kind of work as you go?
yeah, it's going to be throughout the season.
Okay.
Probably the first sort of stuff that'll happen will be probably I think we'll probably be starting with some of the raised bed building and stuff, but all of this I plan on getting back because I know I mentioned it earlier is I didn't make much content this last year. That will be our goal this next year is we're
Okay.
doing all of this sort of stuff, whether we're growing out of the yard at my friends like we normally do, the alleyways, you get all that sort of stuff, but we're going to build out our front yards right into a front yard urban,
That's going to be
we'll
cool.
call it a little urban farmstead maybe, and have a bunch of raised beds that are even more public facing because people driving by, instead of having to walk through the alleyway like most people or drive through the alleys to see what I'm doing, you'll see it
Right.
right from there, right from the road. And again too, also everybody in the neighborhood who used to see and come by and compliment me all the time about the rooftop garden we used to have, because I used to have like 30-40 containers up there, huge
Oh, that's crazy.
rooftop container garden up there. That'll be back up again this next year, and so we'll have that all up there again. And I'm going to put the bees up on the roof with them. So
That'll
we'll
be
have the
great.
bees up on the roof up
Yep.
there, and chickens down in the back. So we'll have all that stuff, and each build out will cover on our channel. Each thing that we do as far as setting the rooftop back up. I mean, I'm going to cover it all, whether it's on our journals, and I'm going to also try to do a little more singular how-to type videos this next year. We're going to just focused on one singular subject, and whether it's a do-it-yourself or how-to or just informative type videos, really kind of dial in on certain subjects and different things when it comes to growing. And again, we really cover a lot of like urban small space city gardening, but it's gardening in general. It's growing.
Right.
It's fun.
Yep.
As far as that goes, I mean, I've got videos coming up of visits we've done, like down in Los Angeles with Crop Swap Los Angeles that we did. The urban homestead I went back to and got to visit with them, and I'm excited about putting that video out this next year. It's one of my best videos on my channel. That it's got like 250,000 views.
Oh, wow.
So I finally 4 years later got to go back and do a whole new video with all three of the siblings now, and
That's
it's just
cool.
going to be so much better, so much more informative, and really tell the story of that urban homestead there, because they've been that place has been there since like 1985.
Wow. That's
I
as
don't
old
even
as
know
I
what year
am.
you were born.
Yeah, that was the year I was born.
85. So there you go.
Yep.
That they've been doing that as long as you've been alive, right there in Pasadena, California.
That's crazy.
And teaching and inspiring people. I mean, way back in the day, they were on like national news outlets and all that sort of stuff for years, and in different programs, and had their story told. But I've been lucky enough to be one of the more recent people who've gotten a chance to go in and tell their story.
That's
So,
cool.
so we got all that sort of stuff, telling stories
Right.
about gardeners and farmers and all that sort of stuff. And then we've got our weekend Let's Get Growing show,
Right.
which we're going to work on and get you on here this next year as we get set up
I
for
would love to
our
come
next
on.
season. Oh yeah, we're
Love
going
to
to get
come
you.
on.
Yeah, I've got whole new things and I'm going to be talking about a lot of this sort of stuff coming up on some shows here in the next couple of weeks of what we're going to be doing coming into this next year versus what we've been doing this year. I mean, this year's shows, it's just been such a great success, maybe not have quite the views that I was hoping to get ultimately, as
Right.
far as that sort of thing goes, but that wasn't our top goals when we set the goals for this year. The
Right.
top goals was first to be consistent, and then second to get some of the top best guests that we believe in the garden industry world, content creators and such, on
Right.
our show, because that's what we pride ourselves about, getting those people who are well known, like
Right.
the big, and I've got one and I'm going to be announcing here too as we close out the season in a couple of weeks too. I already have the first guest booked for next year, And I'm telling you, I'm so super excited about it. It was the very top name on my list when I started all the list out for the dream guests. The top
Right.
of my dream guest list is going to be on the show as our first guest of the year next year. So I'm
So when
super
does that
psyched
drop?
about it.
When will
What's
that
that?
be on? When will that be?
Yeah, we will open up our the 2024 season for the show, which we really only take the winter break. So it'll start up again at the end of February.
Okay, cool.
So I think the last weekend of February we'll be starting 2024 shows. We still
Cool.
got one or two more to go for this year. And then, I still do live streams on
Right.
Saturdays. It's just the show itself, the
Right.
specific show. Well, I'll still be there throughout the winter doing live streams, just me by myself. But we'll be gearing up for our 2024 year, and it's going to be
That's
super exciting, so much fun, and everybody watching is look forward to seeing you there too on
Yep.
some of the things, and I'll be getting a hold of you too to talk to you about how I got you thinking about fitting you in and all that too. So
Sounds
it's gonna
good
be
to me,
great.
man. Sounds really good. I love coming on and doing. I'll be honest with you. If I could, I'd probably do a podcast every day like Joe Rogan. You
Right?
know, I'd grow my own stuff and do my own thing, but I'd probably just, if I had it to do, I would probably just make a complete podcast about growing and have a show every day like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I think there's just so much that a person can cover. There's so many different things that people do that we don't know
Mhm.
about, that other people
Yep.
know about. It's just such a wide variety of
Mhm.
different things within growing,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and then get into their own little things, that like giant growing, or growing greens, or growing this or growing that. Like there's
The
so
pepper
much.
community,
Right.
all of
It,
that. Yeah, exactly. There's always these other little niches, but we all center around the love for growing things, gardening in general, and all that sort of
right.
stuff. And I think when we get an opportunity to have discussions and talk with each other, about these sort of things, and really just kind of be able to share our passions with other people, is just kind of the great thing. It's the thing I love the most about doing what I do as far as, content creation myself, is just the ability to share the things that I really enjoy the most with other
Right.
people, you know.
And that's the same with me. I love sharing it with everybody else. It's fun to grow. I've said this a million
Yeah.
times. I'll say it again. Growing is fun, and growing is a passion of mine. But I'm more passionate about sharing it with others
Hmm.
and spreading the word.
Yeah.
And I don't know it all, so my job is to find others who do. Not that they
Yep.
know it all either, but to paint a picture with everybody together of this is how you do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing, and the second your idea about doing this every day, I mean, if I had a booker, someone who could book for me and make sure I got a good quality guest every single day, I would totally do that. But you'd have to have some sort of help on that, or sort of
Oh yeah,
interview that sort of
absolutely. You would have to. Yeah.
stuff.
Yep,
I mean,
definitely.
it becomes quite the job to make sure and get things done on more of a solo situation that I do with a lot of that stuff. But
Well, just trying to do one a week is a lot, for
mhm.
me. I mean,
Yeah,
trying to make
yep,
sure it's booked, trying to make sure everybody still shows up and things like that.
yep.
And we're going to start doing it's going to be a pre-recorded show, but it's going to be an ESPN type of show
Oh,
for
right.
giant growing.
Okay.
So we're
Yeah,
going to
that
be
sounds
giving
like fun.
predictions. Yeah, we're going to give predictions. We're based off of stats from years prior.
Yeah,
We're going
yeah.
to have instead of America's team of the week, we're going to have America's grower of the week and things like that. And
Oh,
we're going to
wow,
have
right on.
a group of guys on here, me and a couple other guys who are going to go and kind of talk about these things, and why we believe X or Y Z grower is going to do good this week, and what we expect out of them, so and so forth. And I
Yeah,
think it's just going to be fun. It's just going to be fun. Now I'm sure there's going to be growers out there who are going to get mad about it,
right.
because how dare you, put them lower or higher or whatever,
Yeah,
than
yeah,
but that's not the intent. The intent
yeah.
behind it is to have fun
Yep.
and to attract more people into giant growing, but also to kind of be like, okay, well, we're picking them based on X, Y, and Z, and like their growth styles, growth
Yep.
patterns, whatever. And for instance, we're going to say like, Enoch Graham is known for growing, giant pumpkins, in excess of week 12. He's growing giant pumpkins that are, exceeding, 50 pounds a day or something like that,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And, but we think because of the weather that he's having this year and this that are kind of stacking up against him, we're probably only going to see about 30-pound days this week. Right. Like something of that nature,
rundowns, predictions, matchups,
right. Exactly.
those sort of things. And
Yep.
yeah, just creating a fun environment around, around growing and that sort of thing. I think that's just a great idea, and just give it some pizzazz, that sort of like flashy
exactly
ESPN type of thing. And like it's not like you're gonna nail everything down or that sort of thing, because it's just like what a sports show would be. They're not telling you and predicting things, they're telling you what they think and from what they see and what they know, where they think things are going. Will this person succeed with this type of offense? Will this team be able to handle this sort of defense, and these sort of things are all speculative type of things,
right.
when it comes
Exactly.
down to it.
But it draws that interest, right. And it creates that fun thing, because the way that I'm seeing this, I'm kind of forward thinking about it, but the way that it's looking is that giant growing eventually will become a actual sport.
Right.
Just because of the popularity that it's gaining, the momentum and everything, the money that's getting pushed behind it and stuff.
Yeah.
It has no other path to go but to go to a actual hobby sport,
Right.
And so kind of forward thinking on my part, I'm just kind of like, what? Like there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I think I'm going to create this, So I start talking to some big name growers and I'm like, hey, do you want to come do this with me? We'll pre-record the whole thing. And we'll only do it during giant growing. We'll start pre-giant growing season, probably early March, end of February, early March, and we'll push on through, right? And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because we'll be able to see, how people are amending their patches, what they're doing. We'll be able to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And that gives, instead of somebody having to look for the platform on Facebook, where do I go to get all this information? And then having to read through thousands of posts to find that one thing they're looking for, we'll be able to point them to a specific episode and say, hey, this is episode whatever. This is where we talk about A, B, and C on multiple different levels and go check it out,
Yeah.
So hopefully it takes off and does well. Will it? I have no idea, but I'm going to try it.
Oh man, it sounds good. I mean, for me, I'm thinking, and I'm coming up with all this sort of stuff. I'm like, dude, I really think it would be cool, and that kind of idea of not necessarily. I mean, there's a certain level of competition in it. You're growing, you're doing this, and you're pitting different what would be athletes against each other in a sense, and you're running their stats, So based on last year's stats, this and that, what do you think this person's going to be able to do this year? Where can they outcompete this person who actually grew bigger than they did last year? This person grew last year,
right?
You know what I mean, and then see what, and then again, it comes down to the end of the season where you got like basically final results now,
right? Exactly.
And so you've kind of speculated and played the game and the competition throughout the year. And then in the long run, there's the I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one.
No, you're right.
It's a show covering one sport, so it's the Super Bowl of that sport.
Right.
The final way.
Who's going to take home the gold?
That's right.
So who's going to be this year's champion? And what's cool about giant growing is you also have those rivalries. Where it's not just a game that's scheduled on the season like every year, right? You have those rivalries in giant growing where you're like, okay, well, this is a big matchup right here. If these guys end up getting to the final with their pumpkins, okay, what's it going to be like? And I would like to get to a point where I end up getting to go to that way off, whether it's way out in California or whatever, get to go to that way off and be there, for that rivalry, right? And get the video that and feel that and stuff. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. I hope it will be. I hope it don't make people upset or mad. I'm sure with anything.
There's always a group.
Right. But the intent is not that. The intent is to bring it about, have fun with it, and people to learn from it, right? Because you would be able to learn from this because of the stats that we would give, the information that would be there. It would be a very learning thing, but it would be fun at the same time. So I'm hoping it'll work out, because the way I want to do it is Monday have a video drop, Tuesday have a live stream, Wednesday have a video drop, Thursday be the ESPN day, and then Friday have a video drop, and then Saturday and Sunday I can just relax,
There you go.
So I hope it works out like that. But
it sounds like a great plan.
We'll see.
Love the idea. Love the idea for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, look, I know we've been on here for almost 2 hours, so I'm going to cut you loose here in just a second. So guys, here's what we got going on next week, December 12th. We got Jason Loris coming on. He is the world record holder of the butternut squash at 130 some pounds this year. Yeah, it was a monster. It was a brick. He actually grew 120-pound something and then grew that 130. And I think they were both on the same plant. Massive plant, great grower. Highly encourage you come check it out next week if you got time, because he's a very, very intelligent guy. So we got him on next week on December 12th. December 19th and December 26th, I'm going to be over at Kettle Kitchen. I'm taking a break. I've been a full year come January. I ain't missed one live stream all season long, okay? I need a break. There you go. So I'm going to go over to Kettle Kitchen.
Even I've missed a couple.
Have you?
Yeah. Just a couple weeks.
That's okay, though. That's okay, because I'm taking a vacation for 2 weeks. So on December 19th and December 26th, there ain't going to be no live stream. If you do want to catch me, though, I'll be over at Kettle Kitchen, and we're going to be playing some games over there. He runs a game night over there on his channel, and I'm going to go over and participate and have fun, because he's been wanting to get me on, and I just couldn't do it because I had live streams to do. So we're going to do that. So that should be a lot of fun. But January 2nd, we'll start over again, and that'll be our first live stream of 2024. So I don't have anybody nailed down just yet, but trust me, there will be one. So come and join us next week, and then we'll pick it back up January the 2nd, and we'll have some fun next year, and we'll see what next year brings about. So I really want to thank you for coming on again. It's been a great place to be tonight, and I love having you on. I really want to get you on again next year to see what you've transformed and done over there, because I'm pretty excited to see what happens over there.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be a great fun year. I say that every year, but man, with the opportunities I've got for this next year, boy, oh boy, I can't wait.
I can't wait to see either. So tell everybody where they can find you at, and what name, title, and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. You can check me out at The Urban Gardener here on YouTube. You'll find our channel there. That's where we have most of my videos and our weekend live stream, the Let's Get Growing show. You can also find that at letsgetgrowing.live for our website as well, too. So definitely love to see everybody come join us and check out our weekly guests that we have on our show, and some of our great video content. As I said, I'm going to have a bunch of cool stuff coming up this next year. And so come along, follow along with us on The Urban Gardener.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Me and you'll wrap up on the other side of this. It's been a good place to be. Again, thank you so much. And guys, we'll see you next time right here in the hollers and hills of West Virginia. See y'all.